Today we're going to make it's a snakewood ring out of this with this. Today I'm going to do a quick video. It may not be that quick, but I'm going to do a video on our new product called the Shape Cutter. It's a on-console software app that we will be adding to and enhancing as time goes on. But it's all on the console, so I'm going to design a ring that I have to replace. All on the console, no need for other software packages that you'll be exporting to the machine. So this is kind of a new application. I haven't played with it that much, but I did this morning a little bit, and I'll run you through it. Here we go. Okay, so earlier this morning I played with it a little bit and cut this ring out. I had to cut my wedding ring off. I twisted my hand in a glove, twisted my knuckles, and it swelled to the point that I had to cut it off. So I just decided to play with the Shape Cutter and see what we could do. I played with a couple different sizes until I got the size right for the inside diameter of the ring, and then played with a couple of options on the outside thickness until I got one that I thought looked okay. We certainly did great. Let it focus here. This was held down just with the double stick tape and CA glue method. I want to get it to looks right, but that's a 1/8 inch thickness, and it's of course concentric all the way around, but it was too thin. It's very easy to break, so when you put pressure on it or it gripped something real hard, it just shattered into multiple pieces. So I went thicker. I did a 1/4 inch over the inside diameter, so it's an 1/8 of an inch thickness, and then I settled on 3/16. I think it looks better, but we're going to play with it. So I've got some snakewood here from the Woodcraft bargain bin, and I'm going to play with it here in the end, just doing everything through Shape Cutter. Okay, when you boot up your machine, this is the screen that you're given in the version 1.1 update, and all of our users will get these updates as they are rolled out. So we're going to go to Shape Cutter, and I'm going to cut a circle. The first cut on the inside, I'm going to cut a hole. This will be the inside cut, and I'll do this with no tabs and just grab it and grab the piece as it cuts loose. So my diameter is going to be 0.93. Sorry, let me get where I'm focusing on it. 0.93, and again I may have, that's 993, so I'm going to backspace 0.93. And the thickness of this material, the snakewood is not as thick as the Macassar ebony was, so I'm going to do this at 0.49. I'm sorry, 0.395, and we'll move to the next screen. I don't need to calibrate the Smart Bench. It's already calibrated, but this is an easy way to get to it if you've moved the machine. Say you're doing countertops, you need to cut sink cutouts or something like that on site. You move it, and it's coming in from the truck that's been out in the freezing cold all night. You may want to calibrate. It takes less than 10 minutes, and that way you're squared away. We're going to skip that. I'll run you guys through the checklist, but I bypassed this area. These are the steps that we're going to go. We're going to clear this top side, clean everything off the axes, empty the vacuum bag for the dust extraction, fit the vacuum hose. It just walks you through it step by step. So for a new user, it walks you through each of the different steps. You can bypass it by just coming here and touching the material icon. But we're going to go through. Everything's there. We've connected the shop vac, the dust extraction underneath it. All the power cords are secured. Everything looks good. The Z-head connectors are all on and tight. So we're done there. We're going to go to the next step, and you'll see it move from the prep to the material. So we're going to home the Smart Bench if we haven't already done it, secure the spoil board, secure the stock material, and make sure it's held down. Again, I'm just going to blow past these. I'll go ahead and home it. I'm going to pause it just while it's doing this. It's going to take a second. You'll notice some new lights on the version 1.1 update. I won't even pause, it'll just take a second to do. 15 seconds or so. And you'll see I have my jig for indexing here on the end. I just leave it on. I was going to build a vacuum table today. I'm still mulling over the drawings in my head. think I'm wanting it to do too many different options and things. So it's finished now, and then we're ready to load our material. Well, I already did, and I held it down the way I hold down a lot of things on a spoil board, with CA glue on the spoil board, CA glue on the bottom of my piece. I typically do one line of CA glue down the middle of this if it's a medium thickness CA glue. In this case, I grabbed thin, so I did twice, and then I put activator on the bottom of the piece, on the tape that's on the bottom of the piece, and then put that down. The rings will come out of these sections, and we'll move on back to the console. Secure the spoil board, we've done that. Secure our piece of material, we've done that. And we're going to clamp the X-beam. I'm using my Corian risers, so it's already held up and clamped down. So everything's loaded. We've gone to the next step. You want to choose an existing cut profile, and you can. What I've done is I've saved a profile where I defined the tool, and I called it rings inside and rings outside. One was the inside cut, which I didn't do any tabs, and one's the outside cut where I did do tabs. They were very thin tabs, so I did them at 2 different thicknesses. That's part of what I was playing with here with the multiple cuts. In either case, I'm going to bypass that and show you each step. Let's let it focus here a second. Okay, so it would have you take your Z-head, your spindle out, and put the new bit in that you're going to use. I've already done that, so I'm going to blow through these steps. They're telling you to fit the cutter. Yes. Okay, I put it in. And my dimensions is a 0.125. It's an 1/8 inch single flute Freud bit from Woodcraft. The cutting length is 0.62 approximately. And the shoulder length, I'm not sure what it is, but the reason they have you put this in is they don't want you to be cutting deeper than your cut length can be. And so I loaded my spindle back on, clamped it down, so everything's there. And we're going to let this thing focus again. And do I want to set tabs? In this case, I'm going to say no. And this setup can be in English or metric as you're setting it up. Now, I think we're going to probably make some modifications to it. I think we're going to go to 3 or 4 decimal points. Right now, it's truncating it to 2 on the display. It may be keeping it internally. I'm not sure. This is so new. I haven't even flipped the message back to Yeti in the UK yet on it. So enter the feeds and speeds. The XY feed rate. I'm using Snakewood. This is very dense. I looked it up. I think it's a 3800 Janka. So I'm going to go slow and very cautious with it. So this is set at 35 inches per minute. Spindle speed is about 18,000. Again, I'm using the 800 watt spindle, so I can control my speed on the top here. There's several settings. This spindle goes between 9 and 29,000 RPMs or something in that range. I usually set it in the middle, 3 or 4. And that should be in the 18 to 22,000 range, something in that. But again, I can play with it up or down while it's working. I'm just going to go very cautious and a lot of passes in this case, because that's the only Snakewood I have. So how deep do we want to go past the thickness of our material? I'm going to go 40 thousandths. Step down. I'm going to do 625. I'll just do a 1/16 of an inch. Very, very easy cut. Just barely kissing it. And we're going to do one finishing pass. There'll be an extra circle on the bottom. And we'll keep going. And it warns us, hey, our step down is greater than half the cutter diameter. This may be too big for the size of the cutter. A good guide is typically to just do the radius of the bit, not exceed the radius, but we're going to go past that. You know, even cutting melamine or you know, thick butcher block, I do sometimes with a 1/4 inch shanked bit, 2 flute compression spiral or 2 flute straight flute, 1/4 inch bit. I'll do a 3/8 inch cut with this spindle, with this 800 watt spindle. So, but in this case, I'm trying to be very conservative with everything. So we'll go ahead and bypass this and keep going. But I like to save this as a new profile. I can save this with a name that'll bring up those saved feed speeds and everything, depth of cut. I'm going to not save it. This is just going to be a one-time thing. And it's going to ask us, do we want to home the Smart Bench? I think this is a mistake. I don't think we should be homing it twice. I've got a list of notes and questions as to why things are in certain orders and which steps may be extra. but I don't see a need to home it again. We've just homed it once we turned on the machine. I can bypass this step. I can show you how. If you just skip, once it finishes, I'll show you. If you skip to here, to the next step, it'll bypass this and you can come backwards using the back arrow. So right now it's going to have us set the XY job datum and then hit the set like we normally do. So I'm going to move to the next screen, and this lets me jog. I'm in slow mode. I'm going to go to fast mode and bring the machine back. And I want to set it on the end of that piece. Okay, now we've got, slow it down, set it like that, and I know it's going to be fine, but I like to drop my spindle down to see where it is in the X and Y, in the X direction. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go past this, and I'm going to go past these steps, and then drop the spindle down. So what I'd like to do is have the same Z settings that we normally have put onto the prior screen. So with that nice and low, now I can see exactly, I'm going to come back the steps. And this is where I'm setting my orientation point, which is the center of my circle. So I'm going to come in and zoom in. I'm going to change it to slow mode. And I'm going to center that in the material. That's going to be close enough for me. So I come back here and I set that as my orientation point. The light flashed green saying, yep, it took it. And now it's ready to go do the next step. I'll let it focus here for a second and then move to the next one. I can remove the dust chute. Mine was already out because this is where I'm going to set my Z. And here I would set my Z, and it's the same touch-off screen as what we typically use. So I'm going to grab the touch-off plate, put it underneath it. Let's see if I can get it to balance here without. Okay, I'm going to have to reach down and touch the screen and then switch hands and do it. So Z0, and as it's coming down, I'm holding down the plate. It touches it and lifts up. It flashed a green light showing that it had taken the reading. So we've set the material XY datum and the Z datum, the thickness of the material, and we move to the next step. Replace the dust shoe. I'm going to leave it off just so we can see the cutting. I don't care about tracing the bounding box. This is an update that they need to fix. This goes incredibly slow. It's probably a metric to imperial conversion that they didn't quite take care of. I want to check to make sure my dust extractor is on and hooked up. It's going to power up for 2 seconds. Come to the next, check my spindle. And it's ready. So I'll move to the next step and we're all set. Go. That's it. So I've programmed a circle where I'm going to cut the inside of a ring, and then I'm going to come back in and cut the outside of the ring, giving it a different diameter and cutting strategy. So you're all set, so we can go. And that's it. Dust extractor's on, spindle's on. It has moved to the outside of that radius of the circle. I've got that set at 12 inches per minute for the plunge rate. So what's great about this is that you don't have to design a lot of different pieces of tape. So we're going to be adding to this as we go. Now that piece is going to cut loose. I don't have any tabs on it. And that's okay with me. This last pass may take it up, or not coming. Probably the last pass. Okay, so that has finished, completed it. That took 57 seconds. At that speed, that was very, very conservative passes. Would you like to save this as a new profile? In this case, I'm not, but this is where you would save it and name it. And I'll show you how to pull up a saved profile, because it can fill in half that information, or a lot of the information we've already entered. So we're going to say, okay, was that job successful? Yes, it was. So what do we want to do now? We want to do a new job. And I'm going to keep the same settings, except I'm going to go to the outside of the circle. So I'm going to do what they call a plate. We're going to cut an outside of the circle. And the new diameter is going to be, let me check real quick, see what I liked. Okay, what I liked was the thickness plus 3/16 with the Macassar ebony. Again, the density difference is going to make a difference in how well it stays together. So that was that was a 0.93 inside dimension plus 3/16, 118. And that looks okay. It should be 11875, but we'll leave it, that's fine. And our cutting depth is going to be the Z, the thickness of the material is still the 395. And we'll go to the next step. Do I need to calibrate the Smart Bench? No, we go to the next step. I'm going to bypass this and show you how we go past this. So I would go to my material, all my loading stuff, it's already loaded, I don't need to do that. So would I like to load an existing cut profile? Yeah, so I'm going to show you how this works. You just grab one, and this was with 80 thousandths thick tabs. I think that's a mistype, I think it was 60. And so what that's doing is it's pre-populating the feed speeds and tabs and things like that. Let's let it focus. With information that you've already saved. I'm still going to get a chance to review that information, but we get to look at it. So right now the machine's moving a sec, and it's asking us to remove the spindle, blah, blah, blah. And again, I can step through these, or I can go to the next step by just hitting the next tab over here at the top. I'll just step through them. Yeah, we've taken the tool off, we've changed it. We're still using the same tool. Don't have to change any of these values. Am I going to set tabs? Yes, and they're in inches. The distance between the tabs is 1 inch. The thickness of the tab is 60 thousandths, so it was named wrong. The file was named wrong. And the tab width is 1/4 inch. Feeds and speeds, again, we're at 35 inches per minute, 12-inch plunge rate. Again, this is very slow, but it's a very dense material. I don't have much of it, and it's snakewood. I don't want to ruin it. It's expensive. And we're leaving 40 thousandths that we're going into the spoil board. Again, that may not make it into the spoil board. I've got 2 layers of tape plus the glue gap that's being pressed out. And the step down I'm going is at 0.08. I'm going to go with the 16th. .0625, and we'll do one finishing pass if it can. A finishing pass will just let it go back one more time around the circle, which is good depending on the bit thickness, because I don't want the bit to be flexing. So that second pass, if it's not under duress, it may be worth it. Again, I'm taking such a shallow cut that it probably won't be needed. The step down rate is greater than half the cutter size, correct. But I'm telling you what to do. Would I like to save this? That's how we saved it. And I'm going to skip this step. Do we want to home the Smart Bench? We don't need to. So this is how we skip it. I'm going to go past it to the next step. And basically at this point, it's already ready. So I'm going to backspace into it. And this is where I would set my Z. Well, I've already done that. But this is where I would set my X and Y. That's already set as well because of the prior job. But if I wanted to do this again and just run the same job, but now over 1 inch and a half, so I can do a separate ring there in that gap, I can blow past all this, get to this screen here, and then back up and reset my XY position. My Z position is already saved. I don't have to change that. So we can just shortcut some of this. So I'm using the same point as I used as the center of the inside diameter of the circle, as I need to use that same point for the outside diameter, so I don't have to change anything. So I can just skip past this. My thickness of material, I've already set it. I don't have to set it here. Place the dust shoe. I don't care about it tracing a bounding box. I don't care about checking the dust extractor or the spindle. I know they're on. We're all set to go. Let's go. Now this may come out. So what I do, I usually grab a pick so that I can pull it if it needs to, and I also can stop it here on the console. So on the console we have the same information we have with the other. I can speed up the speed through the material here, or I can stop it or pause it. That's one pass. The second pass. Zoom in a little bit. Again, this is a very, very light, conservative cut. Snakewood is very dense. Some people do have quite an allergy to it. I'll know soon because I gave myself one heck of a swing a second ago. So let's see. Here it looks like it's doing the tabs. And here I'm going to be ready to stop it if it's cut loose. I'm on the console next to the stop button, not the emergency stop. I can do that. It's just the stop button. And there, we're done. So that's a complete job. Inside and outside circles of what's going to be a ring, if it works. Using shape cutter. So it was 1 minute and 28 seconds with very shallow passes. I don't need, it gives me an option to save it since I can, at this point now I've seen the cutting strategy. Do I like to save it and want to save it? I won't. Was the job successful? Yes. And we're ready to go back to the console, whatever we want to do. So I'll go back to the console. And here I can come in and move the head out of the way. Pick this out. I had a thick tab there. Okay, so I ran out of space on the phone and it kicked me off. I'm going to just cut another one as a second one, and then I'll pull this up from the table. The tabs were a little thick. I could have done it thinner as an onion skin, but I just, and that way I could have just poked it and scraped it loose and pulled the whole thing out. The center does come out. But I don't want to break this, so I'll take it out, flip it over, and just sand the thickness of it, or cut it with a file. But I'll do the same one right here, the same thickness of the, again, you can see the very consistent in the quality of the cut. So this is Snakewood. It should be stunning when it finishes up. So I'll just cut another one, and then we'll get a look at it as it comes off the table and for sanding. Okay, I'm gonna go through the whole process again, but this time I'm gonna bring up the files that I've already loaded. So I'm gonna say I want to do a shape cutter. I want to do a circle. I'm going to do the inside profile first, and it's a 0.93. I've changed the depth to a 0.42, so I can cut all the way through it. So this one's going to cut loose, probably, rather than be still attached to the material. I don't need to calibrate it. I don't need to go through the checklist. So this is how we jump ahead. I could look at there and look at the loading of the checklist for my materials. I don't need to. I'm going to skip to the next step. Would I like to load an existing cutout profile? I'm going to say yes. So these are different profiles that I saved as I was coming in and saving it when I was playing with it on the McCassart Ebony. So I'm going to do rings, no tab, just the rings with for the inside, and tell it OK. And that's the cut profile that's loaded. And it tells me what my settings are here, but I'll get to preview them as I go through my steps. So here it would be having me do the bit change. I'm not doing a bit change. Am I using tabs? No, not on the inside cut. And the feed rate's 50. Again, that looked good on the other one. The plunge rate was nice and slow. There was no ramping built into this app yet. There will be, but not yet. Let's let it focus. Spindle speed set at 18,000. I'm going 40 thousandths into my material. Where do I want to save this? This is how I saved it, to the one that was called Rings inside. And it's going to home it, but I don't want to home it. I don't want to waste the time. So I'm going to step past it and then back into where I set my XY datum, because that homing would be an extra step that we just don't need to do. So here I'm going to adjust it so that the center of the bit is in line with where it was here, but right here. So this is something that it took me a minute to see, but I can go to my XY point, and it's going to what I had saved before. And I'm going to go to my X point, and then I'm just going to move it over. So now it is dead centered over the first ring that I cut. So it is right here in the center of that hole if I drop the spindle down. So what I'm going to do now, back on the console, I'm just going to move it to slow mode, and I'm going to just move it over. I see how that is centered in this, you know. If I have this over an area that I can cut, I know I'm good. So I'm just going to move it over. That should be fine. It'll center right there in the middle of that gap in between these, and my XY, or my X position, is set the same way it was on the first ring. I'm good. So I'm going to tell it to set that as my center of this circle that I'm going to cut. The light went green and then blue, and then I can step through the other steps. Pull the dust shoe, set the Z height. I don't have to change it. It's the same thickness. Again, this was out of the scrap bin at Woodcraft, so it's going to vary in thickness, and I don't care. It'll work with this setting. I could have planed it and made it all the same thickness, but I don't need to. So we're going to replace the dust shoe. I'm not going to do the bounding box. I don't care about the extractor or the spindle. I'm just ready to go. Barely make it out of this near side where it chipped away a little bit, but it should be fine. If not, I can sand it and double the ring a little bit more. Okay, so now we want to go back in and do the outside ring. I want to do a new job. I've got to wait for it to finish doing what it was doing. Okay, it has finished. So now I'm going to do the outside. They call it a plate. And that was a 1.18. Get that better. So 1.118. I think. Let me make sure. Sorry, I've played with these values and done different thicknesses of the ring, so I wasn't sure. Now, I don't like when we tap into one of the fields, we're losing the ability to look at it because the keyboard covers it up. So I'm going to ask that they move things up, maybe across the top. It's a great layout. You get what they're doing with all of the graphics on screen and stuff. They did a wonderful job with the interface, but I like to be able to see my numbers as I'm typing, because sometimes if I'm backspacing over something, I may not backspace far enough. So I'm at 1.118, same depth of cut. Do I want to calibrate? No, I'm just going to bypass it. Again, I don't need to do any of this. I can go straight here, and I don't need to home it. I can go here, and I can back up if I want to. My XY position is where it is. Still at the same spot from when I did this inside hole, so I'm good. I don't have to change anything. I know I can just tell it to go, but I want to run through the steps so that you can see them. The Z height hasn't changed. Replace the dust shoe. I don't care to see the bounding box. I don't care about the dust collection or the spindle. Tell it to go. Again, I'd like to have the ability to ramp in and ramp out and do things like that, which I can do with any of the V-Carve or Vectric products. But this is a console-based software. This lets you or your team do work on the job site without any computer, without Wi-Fi, without a USB stick, just the very basic shapes. So I'm going to stop the video and we'll pull it and get a look at everything. Okay, when that just ran, I realized it didn't do any tabs. So I was going to change the cutting strategy to one that I had saved with tabs, and I didn't. So let's just see. It feels like it cut all the way through. Yeah, but it broke. Again, that could be a gap in the wood. I may be able to save that. I'm sorry. There you go. I may be able to save that. The cut looks good. The diameter, I mean, it's consistent all the way around, so I'll probably be able to save that. And let's look at the other one. Okay, the other one I do have tabs, and I can feel it as I hook in and go around it. So I'm going to pop this thing loose, and I'll sand it off from the bottom and see what we got. Actually, that popped it loose. That wasn't what I was intending to do in case it broke, but again, we see the same stress right here, right in line with where the other one went bad, right on that edge. So there could have been a fault in the piece. I'm not sure. Yeah, it is. Okay. So I'm going to CA glue these together and see what they do. Some people finish with CA glue. They'll put the CA glue on and then just wet sand or polish with the micro sandpapers on up. So I'm just going to try it with that. My guess is there was a fault all the way through it here because it was a straight with the grain. So the other option would be to cut bigger and then sand it down. So cut a thicker diameter. The diameter difference between the two. But we'll play with it. Again, that's how we live and learn and play with different materials. Okay, so I did the first one. This is the one that was split in two and had some of the masking tape still on it. I glued that, and it didn't line up perfectly, but I'll sand that away. And the other one, oddly enough, is still together. Although from the top we could see it cracked on all the way through, so it was probably an inherent crack in the material. It is still together on the bottom on this one side, on the close side to the camera. So I will glue that, and then I use typically I use stick fast glue and the activator. So I just put it on, spray it on, put it on, spray it on, and then activate it so it's done, and then I can put another coat on. So what I will do is I will go ahead and kind of drench this to help let the CA glue act as a stabilizer, and it makes it a little more solid, less prone to cracking, because we know that there's an inherent crack in it already. So and then I'll go with 150 and 180 grit sandpaper in a regular pad and soft foam ones so they can keep the shape, and we'll move on through this. Okay, sanding technique. What I've decided to do is the simplest. I have foam pads, a fine pad, and this is a 180 from Mirka. Just stack them, and I hold the ring in my fingers and just go back and forth 6-7 times and just barely rotate it and keep going, because the padding, that's softening the outside edges and taking the face down. On this one, that was the one that was split entirely in two, the quick sanding, you cannot even see, it's very difficult to find the cracks. So when I glued it together, it glued back properly. That's the Macassar. And then this one, you can see the repair right there. So I have to sand that down more, and I can feel it on the inside too, so it just didn't line up properly before I put it together. And again, with CA glue, yeah, I'm gluing my fingertips together, and it's great for guitar playing. Okay, they're all sanded, and I got the inside just to clean them up just by rolling some of this up and going on the inside. So I haven't wiped them down yet. Let's get them cleaned up a little bit. So I'm just going to oil these with mineral oil like I do cutting boards, and hopefully that'll pop. Let's give it a minute to think, so that folks that know wood, it'd be cool if you can see and recognize that it's snake wood. So of course there will be one that's better than the other based on where they were cut in the wood. But that's the Yeti Smart Bench, cutting small pieces held down with CA glue and tape. Very consistent cutting using our new app. It's one of many console apps that we're going to have, so that you can do your work here at the console for simple stuff originally, but it's a proof of concept thing, and we like it. So the existing product, as it was released, does circles inside and outside. Of course, you can set different diameters, just like we did here. And we do rectangles with fillets or without. So it's a good start, and we're going to make it more and more easy to use these and add new function as we go. So thanks for watching.